Okay, hello everyone. Let me check the audio first, so to make sure that everybody can hear us. So if you could hear me clearly, please type the number 1 in the comment section. Okay, thank you very much, Darling Wu. And now I'm sure that you can hear us, so let me start. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because I believe you are at different time zones. So welcome to our 94th session of the Way of Reading live stream. Today, we are so honored to have Professor Hoffmann with us. He's the chair of English language and linguistics from the Catholic University of Eichstätt, Ingolstadt. He will do a guided reading of a new book he co-authored, the Copilot for Linguists. About 2 weeks ago, Professor Hoffmann sent me the link to the freely downloadable PDF. I shared the link to all of our members in the reading club and all my followers of my social medias. Whether or not you have read this book, today is a great chance to learn more about the topic and to get a first-hand information from the author himself. So it's such a wonderful opportunity to learn, I would say. So before Professor Hoffmann starts, I would like to introduce him and his work briefly. Well, as such a towering figure in cognitive linguistics, of course, Professor Hoffmann needs no introduction at all, but I still take the moment to do so because we can all benefit now from the inspirations he provides. Talking about the inspirations, I believe, I think most of you have already known that because I mentioned it many, many times in my live stream. This Reading Together program is actually inspired by Professor Hoffmann and Professor Martin Hilbert's YouTube channels. So here's a webpage of Professor Hoffmann's YouTube channel. I highly recommend you to watch them if you're wondering what you should read or watch as a beginner in linguistics. Now, I benefit enormously from their videos. They cover a wide range of topics in cognitive linguistics and also some introduction videos to linguistics in general. But these wonderful, there are 70 videos, these wonderful 70 videos are just the dessert that Professor Hoffmann provides to the community. The main course is his long list of publications. Professor Hoffmann is expert in cognitive linguistics and corpus linguistics. He's super productive. He's the author of many popular monographs, editors of many edited volumes, and authors of many journal articles and book chapters. And what I admire most about Professor Hoffmann is that he's always at the front line of the methodological and the technological advance in linguistic research. And the book that he will guide us through tonight or today is another exploration on this front. So without further ado, let's welcome Professor Hoffmann. Good afternoon, Professor Hoffmann, and thank you for joining us. Now the floor is yours. I will set you as a host, and then you can share your screen. Just a moment, I need to stop my sharing first. Professor Hoffmann, you are the host now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this kind invitation, for the opportunity to talk a bit about my work and about the Copilots for Linguists element, and for also, making it possible for me to communicate with the large number of followers you have. And so without further ado, I want to take this opportunity to talk about the Cambridge Elements series in general. You will have seen I've already forwarded Lang another publication that he will send you the link to, or he may have even already done that, that is available for download now for the next couple of days. So the idea of the Cambridge Elements series in construction grammar is whenever a new book comes out, for 2 weeks It will be available for free online to download. And maybe hopefully you've done this with Copilots for Linguists. Because after those 2 weeks, it goes behind a paywall and they are only selling the books basically. But during the first 2 weeks, and that's why I will always, when a new book is coming out, I will always inform Lang so that he can share this link with you, so that you can all benefit. It might not be that all monographs appeal to you, but at least you can download it and really look at them and have them for free, which I think is very kind of Cambridge University to have that set up. This was also the reason why Tiago Torrent, Arthur Almeida, and Mark Turner and I decided to publish this particular element in this series. I'm obviously, together with Alexander Bergs, an editor of the Cambridge Elements in Construction Grammar. And so normally I only commission books and I look at them. But when I talked to Tiago and Arthur and Mark, and we sort of independently developed this interest in doing linguistics with chatty large language models, as we will see, then it turned out that the format of the series was ideal to publish this. And then on top of that, for 2 weeks, it was free. And for such a hot topic in linguistics, I think it's important to make it available to as many people as possible. Copilots for Linguists, the title itself is already a pretty good indication of what we wanted to do with the book. If you go to the abstract, where we sort of outline what we want to do, you see here something that you're well familiar with. Artificial intelligence can assist the linguist in doing research on the structure of language. This element illustrates this possibility by showing how a conversational AI based on a large language model, AI LLM as they are called, chatbots, can assist the construction grammarian and especially the frame semanticist. An AI LLM chatbot is a text generation system trained on vast amounts of text. I mean, ChatGPT is probably currently the most famous one, but there's also Bard and many other platforms out now. It's a vastly growing field. And to generate text, these systems must be able to find patterns in the data and mimic some linguistic capacities, at least in the eyes of a cooperative human user. Sorry, that's my coffee machine. It's turning off automatically and it's over there. It should be done in a second if there's too much noise. Okay, so to generate text, it must be able to find patterns in the data and mimic some linguistic capacity, at least in the eyes of a human cooperative user. This is very important because the element doesn't focus on whether AIs understand language, right? There's a huge discussion now, is general artificial intelligence arising? I mean, ChatGPT passes the Turing test. Someone could interact with it and not knowing that it's a computer would deem it a human. And Alan Turing, the computer scientist, the famous one from the 20th century that also helped win the Second World War by decoding the Enigma system, he basically postulated that once you get a machine that can produce output that a human user wouldn't be able to say, that was written by a machine or that was written by a human, then you'd have evidence for some kind of intelligence, for artificial intelligence. I think it is debatable whether that's true. I will have a couple of things to say about artificial intelligent chatbots. But for now, it's very important that there are several publications out there which deal with that particular topic. So is AI intelligent, and sort of does it pass the Turing test and those kind of questions? But that's not what we wanted to do with this particular element. But we really wanted to see how it can be a tool, how it can support our work, and particularly how it might inform and support the linguist who hasn't got a training in computer science. If you are a student of NLP, or if you are a trained computer scientist, then probably you can set up your own large language model and you can train it on your own data and you can make it do what you want it to. And surely in the next couple of years, that's going to be a very important skill, you know, that you automatize many of the coding, many of the data analysis, finding data, analyzing it, statistical analysis. I'm pretty sure that we'll, as a field, will greatly benefit from that. But it's pretty obvious that not everyone can do that, right? Not everyone is a computer scientist. And for them and for us, it's obviously very helpful to engage with the conversational platforms like JetGPT, where it doesn't require you to sort of just start programming. So coming back to the abstract, we investigated whether AI LLM chatbots are useful tools for linguists, sort of testing it with certain queries and seeing how well it responded. And so the discussion is reframed from what these chatbots can do with language, you know, how powerful are they, how intelligent they are, to what can they do for us? How can they benefit our research? And we found that a chatty LLM can labor usefully as an eliciting interlocutor, and we present a couple of scripted routines for prompting conversational large language models. And as we also say in the element, we've also established an accompanying website which has examples of prompts. So the input that you give to JetGPT and other types of LLMs, and where people can also sort of upload their prompts that they thought worked really well. So it's an open access platform for sharing insights and for sharing information.
Sorry, Professor Hoffmann, sorry for interrupting. Could you adjust the size of the screen sharing? Because it's only occupy the center of this screen, so the font size is rather small.
Is this better?
I don't know. Yeah, it's much better now. Yeah. And the font size is still fuzzy. Maybe let me try. I transfer the host to you, not the co-host. Maybe you have a higher authorization, maybe better. Let me try my best. So I set you as the host.
Okay. I'm just quickly gonna stop the sharing and then restart it. So maybe that's also gonna increase.
Yeah, I'll restart the live stream. Okay. So we can restart now. I think it'll be better. Sorry for an interruption.
Oh, no problem, no problem. We want this to be as legible and as intelligible as possible. So I hope the font size is better now.
Much better now, much better now.
Okay. Well, and a lot of what I said, you know, was just basically sort of a general introduction to this. You can, if you've got the element, you can read the abstract. But as I said, the main goal was to see what you can do with it, how it can help you, and not worry too much because there's tons of publication on that, what AI can do, how powerful it is, how intelligent it is. That's sort of not really relevant for us. There is a video abstract that you can click where we also have a short introduction that might be of interest to you. And as I said, there's going to be a link and we're going to click this and I'm going to show you the site when we get to this. Okay. With respect to how we structured it, well, the Copilot thing, that's been around as a label for a bit of time now, and we use that metaphor for the structuring. So just like when you take off with a plane, you know, you've got to have some safety instructions first. So you've got to buckle up and they show you all of the oxygen masks and what to do with this. And we also start with the risks and limitations as sort of safety instructions. We focused in the first part on constructions and construction grammar. I'm briefly going to talk about that. That's really my main field of research. And then we investigated how helpful the chatty LLMs were. We also contrasted two, so JetGPT as one which, if you want to get its full power, you've got to pay for JetGPT for, so it's commercial. Also, it's not clear what training data it used and so on, so a couple of caveats. And we also used Hugging Face, one that people could use freely. And if you've got any background in computing, you can sort of download and use yourself. But of course, it's because there's not so much money invested in it. It's not as powerful as ChatGPT. And the question was, how well do they perform compared to the commercial ones? So a couple of limitations of construction analysis. And then we moved on to frames and FrameNet. I don't know how familiar you are with that. That's the work of Charles Fillmore, who developed the idea that linguistic knowledge is stored in frames, so that when you, for example, talk about buying or selling something, that we have all acquired, because in our cultures, that's the way it goes, that, you know, a seller has some kind of goods and he's selling them to a buyer, and the buyer has to pay some kind of money for it. And then a specific lexical item like buy would focus on the buyer and the goods. So I bought a new guitar, but knowing this, when I say buy, it would activate the entire frame. So you would know that if I bought something, there must be a seller. If I bought something, I must have paid for it. And that explains why you could then ask, well, how much did it cost? And that's a perfectly natural question in the discourse, because as I said, you know, the frame has all of this information, and lexical informations only zoom in on focused or foregrounded pieces of information. Then there's also a section on number 6, prompt engineering for building FrameNet to implement this. Tiago is taking over FrameNet, so that's very important. And then again, final safety instructions, where we assess the risks and limitations. And we're sort of then in the last part imagining the future of copilots for linguists, where it could go. Okay, general introduction, that's basically just what I said. Then a bit on large language models. I assume that you differ with, you know, some of you will have looked very closely into this. Some of you have only a very superficial knowledge. The main point is, well, as the name already says, you know, large language model means they have been trained on an enormous amount of data, billions of words. And then what basically happened was, and I'm sort of simplifying, but the computer had neural networks that detected patterns. Okay, so you know that some words are more likely to appear together, right? So if we now have a text here, for example, on large language models, then terms like neural network will pop up, natural language processing, NLP. So in the context of this one word, we can expect other words. And if you had a text on, let's say, cooking, you know, then in the text there would be like stir the soup or boil the meat, you know, sequences which appear together. And put very simply, sort of what the computer does is, for each word, it registers what are the other words around it. That's sort of also the big advantage of the attention models, because before the large language models, what we would do is you'd have texts as bag of words, you know, and you wouldn't take into account which word is sort of directly in front of it or directly behind it. We know from lots of work on idioms and phraseology, and if you studied any kind of second language, like English for us, for many of us is a second language, that sequences of words are more important than just single word. You don't just need to learn a single word, you need to learn sequences. So if you think about it, it is white wine instead of red wine, right? Even though the wine that you drink might be yellowish or greenish or whatever, the idiom is white wine. And if you go into a room, you got to say good morning and not nice morning, okay? And language has tons of these things where the context is important. And what these large language models do is they basically put all of this into numbers, into a frame where for each word, like for example here, model, there'd be lots of numbers, a large array of tens of thousands of numbers, and these would encode where in the text it stood and which other words co-occurred. And this is really helpful because if you think about terms like bank, you know, the bank, that can be a financial institute where you put your money or get your money from, or it can be the bank of a river. And the only way that we know which meaning of the two is used is because of the context. So long story short, they store all of this, and then that gives you predictions, of course. So if you have a text on cooking and you say stir the, then you have the probability that something like soup or any kind of other liquid comes up is very high. And now what large language models do is they go for the most likely next word. So it's sequence of words, but it's not just a local phenomenon because the arrays also take into account the normal distribution, what normally goes on to the left and to the right. And on top of that, it's also got a bit of randomness in that. Because if you asked a large language model to just sort of always take the next probable word, the highest probable word, it would be not very intelligible. I'm just quickly going to try and find something because I want to illustrate this, and I just got to find the link. I just thought of this. Shouldn't take long. And then I'm also quickly gonna stop this share. And I just very quickly in here, there we go, share screen. So I'm also gonna copy the link and I will send it to Lang via the chat. Then he can also forward this to you. And again, I know that quite small, so making this bigger. So this is by a computer scientist, and it is what is JetGPT doing and why does it work? That's background reading. It's not something we're going to spend a lot of time on. I just want to give you the link. And just the thing that I want to illustrate here is that based on large language data, right? If you write something like the best thing about AI is its ability to, then the computer will, based on its network, say that learn is the highest probable word. 4.5% out of context, learn comes next. Predict is 3.5. But if it only always went for the top one, then the texts, and I will show this in a second, they get pretty boring. So here is, if you always just go for the best next possible word, the text goes, the best thing about AI is its ability to learn from experience. It's not just a matter of learning from experience, it's learning from the world around you. The AI is a very good example of this. It's a very good example of how to use AI to improve your life. It's a very good example of how to use AI to improve your life, and so on. Because that's always the next best thing, right? So if you just go for the most probable, it gets really dull really quickly. And then what they add, he calls this randomness or temperature. So you got like a bit of jitter in there. You don't always go for the best, for the most probable, but also sometimes for one of the lower ranked words. It's interesting how very quickly things become better. So you get 5 different examples. The best thing about AI is its ability to learn. I've always liked. or it continues to really come into your world, to examine human behavior, to do a great job, to create real tasks, and suddenly it becomes more human-like, right? And that's a very important point that, of course, the success of ChatGPT depends on us as the humans to see something that's relevant. Okay. And that's really sort of the degree to which I want to talk about the background, the mathematical background, and whatever it is doing. And we're going to return to the book. But it's important to understand that it's really all that it does, right? It's really successful at always giving you the next word and at having these chats with you, because basically it's been trained on a lot of data, and it's got this kind of probabilistic as well as sort of a bit of randomness in how it strings the words together. Okay. So, as I said, our point is not whether it can understand language. It probably can't. It's only stringing words together. But it's really good at identifying patterns, right? Because it has this large number of associations. And we then try to see where this is leading us. And of course, it's going to automatize a lot of what we do. It's going to improve our lives as linguists, but this is also important from Dissadel. The things that make us human, right? Curiosity, imagination, and discovery, those are going to be the skills that are always going to be relevant in the future. And you will use large language models, that's what we predict, to help you be creative, to help you be curious. It's not going to replace you, you know. In order to do great science, you still need humans. But of course, it's a tool like any other tool, like we use smartphones nowadays automatically, or how we use dictionaries and so on. In order to test, as I said, in the element, we use JetGPT, which is proprietary by OpenAI, using JetGPT-4. And we have preliminary tests. There's lots of open access ones out there: Alpaca, Koala, OpenChatKit, and Open Assistant. And the one that we ended up using was Open Assistant. And we used the so-called Hugging Face chat interface. You can find this. Because the other ones weren't really competitive. I mean, we will see that Open Assistant also didn't do as well, but at least it was a possibility. Okay. So the conversational pattern is what is important. Okay, I'm just jumping through things, and I guess that's the same as you deal with text, so we're not going to read everything. The bit about the safety instructions, that's sort of, again, how it works, what it doesn't do, that it doesn't replace you. And then here, for example, that's a quote from the New York Times: "The chatbots are the least beneficial when we ask them questions."
Professor Hoffmann, the screen freezes. Your sharing freezes.
Oh, I'm gonna.
It's a stay on the page of the references. It's the end of the document.
That's really weird because I'm not even at the end.
Maybe
Really
try
sorry.
re-sharing.
I'm just gonna.
Yeah, now it works.
Okay. All right, good. So I'm here at this quote now, and we're in the safety instruction site. "The chatbots are the least beneficial when we ask them questions and then hope whatever answers they come up with on their own are true, which is how they were designed to be used. But when directed to use information from trusted sources, such as credible websites and research papers, AI can carry out helpful tasks with a high degree of accuracy. So for the future, we say that we should also, and that's sort of already jumping to the conclusion really, but there's a link to the Constructicon, that's a repository of constructions that's open that I'm developing together with Thomas Herbst and Peter Ulrich, and that we want to use to input into JetGPT to do analyses. And there's also Ask Your PDF add-ons where you can upload a PDF to JetGPT. We used this for the classic film OK and O'Connor regularity and idiomaticity from 1988, and we then asked the PDF questions, and that worked really well. So that's definitely a step forward. Okay. And again, you know, it's important that scientists must view LLMs and generative AI technologies as exploratory tools that bolster responsible, mission-driven and society-led research practices, and that support the advancement of scientific discovery and understanding. Okay, and in line with this is what we did. I hope you can now see the section on constructions. So constructions are for meaning pairings. I'm working on this, the theory that says that all levels of linguistic descriptions are constructions is called construction grammar. And there are a couple of pointers in the references to recent important publications. The meaning side of a form, this is where the frame idea comes from, is organized in mental frames, cognitive frames, and as I said, Charles Fillmore is a very important term here. And here's the example that illustrates this. As I said, the buying and selling is an instance. And here's an example from, I have to call my stockbroker. If you hear this, then everyone can activate the appropriate mental package, the appropriate conceptual bundle of related elements. We imagine, unless we're told or have reason to believe otherwise, that the telephone call is about buying and selling securities. Nobody needs to explain that the call is about buying and selling securities because the word stockbroker calls up the entire frame. And in order to understand this sentence, we have to activate information from that frame to build a small mental array containing the speaker, the phone call, and the broker. Okay, and this works for every kind of linguistic element, for any kind of construction. The meaning side should be seen as a frame. And frames can, of all sorts, or forms of all sorts can evoke frames. So you can point at something, at a policeman or a waiter, and that would trigger the frame for policeman. Paintings, sculptures, or picture of objects, the Holy Grail, a sword, a bagpipe. Melodies like dun, 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 that would sort of give you the frame of Star Wars and Darth Vader and so on. From a construction grammar, from a linguistic point of view, and this is where we query JetGPT, then the most obvious forms that evoke frames are words, or more precisely lexical units. So take something like safe, you know, which you could say of a certain situation. Safe prompts us to activate a mental web corresponding to that situation, activating a frame of potential harm from which you're going to be protected, right? Because safe applies basically to you are safe from something. A single sentence can contain many such words and activate several frames. So let's just look here at the example from Halloween, October 2000, where it says a Halloween costume that limits sight or movement is an accident lurking in disguise. So Halloween will obviously activate all of the activities and props associated with the holiday. In the States, it's a big thing. So costumes, trick-or-treating, and so on. Sight and movement evoke embodied frames. Accident activates the catastrophe frame, and lurking a frame of hiding. And finally, disguise is intentionally used ambiguously here, activating the frame of potentially negative effect that's masked as something positive, as well as evoking the costume element of the Halloween frame. Okay, because people are in disguise, obviously, and that's the one meaning in Halloween of costumes, and an accident in disguise can be something, a danger that's hidden. Okay, so syntactic patterns, and this is where we get to constructions and what we did with ChatGPT, are also constructions for meaning pairings. The syntax is the form. So let's take a verb like throw, as in he threw the ball towards the pitcher. That evokes the frame of caused emotion. Okay, so if we look at caused emotion, we know that there's a causer. That's the he in this sentence. And of course, the motion is going to be propelling an object with force through the air by rapid movement of an arm or hand. That is something we know from this frame. And so this is part of your knowledge of language, that you've got a pattern and a meaning associated with it. However, when such a verb, in this case throw, is blended with the ditransitive construction, which is where you transfer something to someone, you give someone a book, he baked her a cake, she sent him a letter. In all of these, the object receives something. So you have the structure of a noun phrase, a verb, followed by a noun phrase and a noun phrase. He gave me the book. He is noun phrase one, is the agent on the meaning side of this caused motion, of this ditransitive causes the recipient. That's going to be me. He gave me the book, and the book has number 4, and the little subscripts are like links in a web page. You click on 4, it takes you to patient. So that's the thing that's affected by the verbal action. So he gave me a book corresponds to he causes me to receive the book by giving. Now we can use a transfer, we can use this transfer pattern, the construction, and put in a caused motion verb like throw. And what would happen there? You get she threw me the Coke bottle, perfectly fine. The transfer frame is activated by the construction. And the caused motion is activated by throw. That's associated. Okay, and so you can see that different verbs can fill different constructions, and in construction grammar, questions would be what kind of constructions can we find, and something like the caused motion construction or the transitive construction, they are well documented and people have looked at the verbs that appear with that. So let's look at the ability of ChatGPT to identify constructions, okay? As the first query, I use the unverb construction. On the formal side, that starts with un, and then you have a slot for a verb. So that would be things like undo, untie, unknot. And the meaning would always be that the un sort of stands for reverse. And then you've got the verb in the second slot for this event. So undo means reverse a doing event. Untie means reversing a tying event. Unknot means reversing a knotting event. So the first query that we had then, we used this construction and said the unverb construction, which creates verbs such as unbutton, untie, has the form that consists of un followed by a verb. The meaning of the construction is reversal. Thus, unbutton means to reverse a buttoning action, and untie means to reverse a tying action. And then I said, please give me 10 more examples of this construction. Now, from a Copilot perspective, you can already, or you might even see where this is heading. The idea is that imagine you run a psycholinguistic experiment and you need stimuli. Instead of just looking for the corpus or coming up with your own stimuli, you could have ChatGPT suggest stimuli. When we look at the output, again, it shows that we as humans still have to be very wary, and we have to look at this. But of course, it's a quick way of getting more examples of a construction, also for teaching purposes. You know, if I want to talk about this construction and I want new examples in an exercise session, I just go to ChatGPT, describe in the prompt, and the prompt is very important. As I said, prompt engineering is a field, and the Copilots for Linguists of company website will sort of collect these. But here we get 10 things. ChatGPT said, sure, here are 10 more examples of the unverb construction. Unzip, unfold, unplug, unlock, unwind, uncork, untangle, unlace, unravel, unclasp. Okay, and they're always reverse. So unzip, reverse a zipping action, unfold, reverse a folding action, and so on. This is fine. Note, however, and that's very important, that you still need to discern the output. Here for number 9, it makes a mistake because it says unravel to reverse a unraveling action. It's of course not true. Unravel is to reverse a reveling action, right? Okay. Open Assistant gives us unbuckle, undraw, unfold. This is fine. Uneven to reverse an even number. I don't think that's the meaning of uneven. It just means it's an uneven number. Untwist, unbraid, unpack, and so on. Perfectly fine. So one question we had was, well, we know that ChatGPT is based on frequencies. Is it maybe also using the most frequent examples for this? For this, we queried an actual corpus, the COCA corpus of American English. The link is in the document. And I queried it and asked myself, well, ChatGPT gave us unzip, unfold, unplug, unlock, unwind. How frequent are they? And this is the frequency of unzip. You get 1,411 hits, unfold, 12,000 hits, and so on, fairly frequent. And I also asked myself, well, what's the frequency to the corresponding verb that doesn't have the un? So you can see that zip occurs 5,000 times, so it's 3.5 times as frequent as unzip. And for the majority, you will see, of course, unfold, unplug, unlock, unwind. The shorter one, wind, lock, plug, is more frequent. Uncork, interestingly, in a corpus, is already more frequent than the simpler version of cork, which of course is something to do with it. Most of us, if you drink, for example, wine, you have to uncork a bottle, and a bottle is only corked by specialists and so on. And unravel is, of course, way more frequent, so that's interesting. The frequencies in open, the Hugging Face, sorry, I've got to go back to Open Assistant, the Hugging Face. There it also got understand, which is of course again wrong. Purely formally, it's to understand is a verb, that's fine, and it starts with un, that's fine, but of course there is no understand. Okay, so this is again an instance where it makes a mistake. And already looking at the time, I'm going to be focusing on the constructional part of the element. One of the questions that Lang was kind enough to forward this to me was also someone saying that they're most interested in that part. So this is a discussion of the different uns. I hope this still scrolls all right, because I want to get to another construction. So here you see Hi Assistant. In the course motion frame, an agent performs an action on an object that causes it to move in a direction. Throw is a course motion verb. Throw evokes the course motion frame. And then we go on to the syntactic pattern, noun phrase, verb phrase, noun phrase, prepositional phrase. Give intransitive verbs in there. So normally to roll doesn't need to be any causation. A ball can roll simply, but it can also be used in the course motion construction that she caused the ball to roll to me. And then we specify more things. And then in the end, please give us 20 examples of intransitive verbs used in the cross-motion clausal construction, like you floated the boat to me. And JetGPT says, certainly. And you get 20 instances. 20 instances which would be very difficult to find in corpora because, I mean, the pattern is also not so simple to find. And on top of that, it's quite creative. So she dreamed the car into the garage. They paused the game for a bathroom break. That's not quite the construction. So again, caveat, it doesn't always work. The child smiled the balloon up into the sky. We'd have to find a context for that, but it's fine syntactically. She laughed the milk out of her nose. All of these fine. And so then you have to look at these. Again, Open Assistant not as doesn't function as well as JetGPT. And then we moved on to look at an even more abstract construction. That's the X of the Y of Z construction. These are things like Paul is the father of Sally. That's a literal meaning. Or you have ones which are metaphorical. Causation is the cement of the universe. Okay. This prompts us to evoke a frame indicated by Y. So here's cement, and to blend it with the XZ information. Please give 10 more examples in which the Y term invokes a conceptual frame to be blended with the XZ information. JetGPT says, sure, here are 10 more examples. The internet is the nervous system of modern society. Gratitude is the memory of the heart. The library is the brain of the universe. Imagination is the fuel of creativity. Time is the river of life. Music is the medicine of the soul. Language is the bridge between cultures. Curiosity is the compass of exploration. Empathy is the food of human connection. Humor is the band-aid of a stressful day. All of these are fairly creative. And the X is the Y of Z construction is used exactly for that, for blending a novel idea, getting something new out. And so it's fascinating that you can also get JetGPT to give you examples like that. We're going to ignore Open Assistant for now. Let's just trust me that its performance in general was always not quite as good as JetGPT. And now the question was, remember how large language models work, you know, probabilities. Normally it's one of the most frequent words that come next. So the question is for these creative ones, how creative are these? And we don't know what was in the training data, right? So I Googled the internet, and then I looked for JetGPT's output, and the internet is the nervous system of modern society. You find 4 hits for that. Were these in the training data? Nobody knows, but at least it's possible, right? So it's not surprising that this pops up. Gratitude is the memory of the heart. You get tons of hits here. That seems to be a conventional, almost like a cliche. The library is the brain of the universe. That shows up, but only 2 hits. So again, is that something that JetGPT came independently towards, or did it get it from the input? We don't know whether it's in the input, but maybe there is something in the language that leads to this kind of creative blending. The final ones, those 3 were interesting because curiosity is the compass of exploration, empathy is the food of human connection, and humor is the band-aid of a stressful day. All had no hits on the internet. Maybe if you Google, query, Bard, the internet right now, you might find it. But back in March 2023, it didn't have any instances. So was JetGPT completely creative? Well, again, it uses patterns, right? And if you look at partial matches, then you see that things like curiosity is the compass of, that is found. Or empathy is the food of, and alcohol is the band-aid of. So the band-aid of life, okay? So the creative examples, again, seem to be sort of based on existing patterns. And I've done a fair bit of work on construction grammar and creativity. And that's also going to be true, that many creative and new examples are not 100% new, but you always use existing elements. Okay, so in that respect, the creative output from JetGPT is not so crucially different from the human output. And checking the time, the one final thing I want to show you, and that's then genre constructions. So knock-knock jokes have a very specific pattern in English where you need to have two people. One goes knock-knock, the other answers who's there. Then someone gives a word, Luke, that has to be repeated, Luke who, and then the pun goes, look through the people and find out, because Luke and look are similar. Knock, knock, who's there? Figs, figs who, figs the door, but it's not working. So figs are obviously fruits, but they can also sound similar to fix the doorbell, okay? We asked JetGPT, this is our construction analysis, whether it could come up with a construction analysis of knock-knock jokes, and it was able to. And this leads to sort of the larger area of, can there be constructions beyond the sentence level, like the knock-knock jokes, which are several sentences, which involve sort of people interacting. So if I say knock-knock, you know, you got to say who's there. So they're bigger than sentences, discourse level constructions. And so I went, well, JetGPT, give me 10 other discourse level patterns that can be analyzed as constructions. And then you get suggestions like, well, apology constructions, that might be a thing. The construction typically begins with an expression of regret, followed by an acknowledgement of fault or responsibility, and ends with a request for forgiveness or a promise to make amends. Job interview construction, debate construction, wedding toast construction, eulogy construction, sermon construction, and so on. So this is interesting because this is a research area where not a lot of research has been done in construction grammar, and where, however, you can use JetGPT's creative interpretation for finding patterns that might lend themselves to a construction analysis, that you can use those. And then you can obviously go for further details, give a detailed analysis of form and meaning elements of the apology construction, and it gives that. So form, apology construction has a specific form that has the following elements: expression of regret or remorse, often signaled by formulas such as I'm sorry or apologize. And then when you go down with respect to the meaning, used to convey a range of meanings, including regret, remorse, feelings of regret, remorse for something that the speaker has done, and so on. And I'm pretty sure, because I've done a lot of research, no construction grammarian had done something on the apology construction before. Of course, there's a pattern there, and JetGPT will have had, like, perhaps in the training data, we can only speculate, but some evidence where someone was talking about apologies and the kind of things that happen there. But it was able to sort of combine this and interpret it from the perspective of constructions, okay? So this is something that hadn't been done in construction grammar, but JetGPT allowed us to look at this. And again, the entire Copilot thing is, it's not a pilot, you know, it's a Copilot. It can help you find new things, it can give you new ideas, but you need to carefully scrutinize it. And of course, then you got to test it. The apology construction, we would then sort of look at as an object of our research. Okay, I've gone over time, sorry for that, because also there was a bit of delay, but I wanted to leave some time for questions. So if there are any, then maybe for 5-6 minutes, we could address these. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Hoffmann. It's a wonderful talk. And currently, there's no question in the comment section. So I would like to take the advantage of being a host to ask the first question. So you mentioned in the talk that all levels of linguistic units can be viewed as construct. And as shown by those examples for apologies and knock-knock joke, those are conversations. So my question is that, as Goldberg put it, it's construction all the way down. Can we also say construction all the way up to that discourse level? So a full text, can we also view a full text of a genre, for example, a journal article, as a construct? In this way, if this works, then we can change the genre analysis, comparing the linguistic features for genre to color-structural analysis. Because a linguistic feature that's specific to a genre becomes a linguistic item that's specific to or typical in a construction, in the way as Professor Stefan Gries would do. So can we do that?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm already opening something else up. I can also share this with you, though it should become open access pretty soon as well. I've written a paper together with Alexander Bergs, and that uses the term that you just used, constructions all the way. So constructions all the way up, where we look at text type as constructions. It's also got a bit of JetGPT in there. These are the proofs, that's why there are still a couple of comments in there, but it should be coming out soon, and I think it should be open access. But football chants I've worked on, and this is one Arsene Wenger. There's only one Arsene Wenger, and syllable structure, it looks a bit complicated, but yes, we say that can be analyzed as a construction. And knock-knock jokes, of course, we talked about those constructions. And the one thing that we did in this particular article is we went beyond this, and I'm sorry again for scrolling through this as quickly as possible. Nursery rhymes, we looked at constructions, but I want to go to this. Give me an analysis of TED Talks. Whether TED Talks, you may have seen those, where experts present something to an audience. And the thing is, at first it seemed as if ChatGPT couldn't do it. It wasn't possible. But when you probe it more to what's the common meaning of a TED Talk and give me a template, then it turned out that it was able to give us something that definitely approaches a full meaning pair, right? So at first it said TED Talks are so different. And that's something that if you think about novels, right? There are so many different novels. So I don't think it'd be very easy to say what's the novel construction, apart from something really abstract. There must be some kind of story, and the meaning on the form side and the meaning side will be it entertains or it tells a story or whatever. But when we look at subtypes like thrillers, or romantic stories or whatever, there are much more patterns that we can see and meaningful elements. And so yes. I would say, yeah, as you framed it, it's constructions all the way up.
Yes. And a further question developing from this is, so a construction is a meaning-form pair, but currently most corpus-based studies is done based on corpus, not a single text, but a collection of texts. But how do we, assign a meaning to a corpus? I think it's easier to assign a meaning to a full text, a text to achieve a certain social goal with a certain, core ideas in a text. But what the meaning of a corpus? So if it's difficult to assign a meaning to a corpus, so does that mean we have to change the way of doing corpus analysis to turn to text-based analysis instead of comparing to corpus? Corporal?
That's a very interesting question. I think it depends to a certain degree on the level of granularity. I mean, you can do a lot of useful construction grammar work if you focus on small scale constructions, right? Coarse motion construction or the ditransitive construction. And if you've got like this very limited pattern and you find ways of putting this into a regular expression and you get all of the instances from the corpus, as you said, Stefan Gries, many people have done great work on this. The one thing that large language models have again brought to the forefront is something I think that you're sort of hinting towards, is the fact that words, and there are constructions, and by that same token, the constructions are obviously not free floating, but they're part of a larger text. And in that larger text, like we said, bank can either mean the bank of a river or the bank where you put your money. And we as humans only know which one it is because of the rest of the context. And the large language models basically encode this sort of by, having some kind of array that also takes into account, this was the type of bank that is used with money and transactions. And the other is the type of bank that was used with water and rivers and boats. So that's definitely also a clue as to perhaps how human constructions might be stored. Even though we know, of course, that JetGPT, I think, when it comes to learning, models some part of what humans have as constructional networks, but not all of it, right? They've got the formal distributional one, which is powerful if you have enough data, but JetGPT doesn't have any domain general processes. It has no embodiment, which is so crucial for how we shape information, different viewpoints, theory of mind, you know, so many things that make us human, which in language acquisition, as we know, have something to do with how kids acquire constructions in situations, in settings, using joint attention. So, you know, the mother or the father, they're looking at the same thing as the child. Intonation, cooperation. So, I mean, some people are overly optimistic about large language models. It's not going to explain completely how humans learn languages, but they cover a significant amount of ground.
Yes.
And as you said, a significant amount of ground also means that the constructions are not just free floating, but they're always part of a bigger structure of a text.
Yeah. Here are several questions in the comment section. I'll read it to you. So Dr. Chocolate asked, is it possible to use GPT to identify constructions from a corpus?
Depends on what you mean identify. You know, currently, you could probably give it a bit of text and say, I'm looking at this construction, which has these properties. Give me all of the instances of that construction from that text. I think that will work. But you'd have to be very specific in the prompting. And of course, again, the prompting is going to be, it's going to direct what it finds. You know, there's the classic saying in computer science, garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you are too unspecific in your prompt and just say, give me a noun phrase followed by a verb phrase followed by a noun phrase, if you're interested in transitive constructions, then you're going to get tons of things which perhaps are irrelevant because, well, it's also going to give you ditransitives, right? Ditransitives also have noun phrase, verb, noun phrase. He slept last week, you know. Last week there, the noun phrase is an adverbial. So the formal pattern would be correct, but it's not the kind of meaning that you want. So the prompting is going to be very important. But yeah, with enough correct prompting, it might be able to help you with that.
Yes, another question, someone asked, could you explain more about the construction goes all the way down?
Yeah. So we've seen that things like, she gave me a book, they can say, well, there's transfer, right? So an agent causes the transfer of some kind of element to a recipient. So she gave me a book, she caused me to receive a book. Now, classically, we would have said that there are verbs like give, which have got these transitive meaning, and they sort of select the other elements. But when we look more closely at all of the types of transfer verbs or transfer constructs that we find, then there's also verbs in there like she baked me a cake, or he WhatsApped me, he WeChatted me the money. You know, if you WeChat someone some money, clearly to WeChat is not normally a transfer verb. It's a means of communication, and means of communication can be used sort of intransitively. They chatted, they WeChatted, but
we actually have this phrase in Chinese now.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We don't use WeChat. We use just one word from just we me $5. We me $40.
Oh, I see. We me $5. There you go.
Just use the first part.
That's good to know, because I've only just been to China. I was in Changsha till the 23rd of December, but unfortunately I didn't have any money on my WeChat, so that's something I need to sort out because everyone's paying with WeChat now. So non-linguistic fact, something I have to keep in mind. So there is this subject, verb, object structure. that is meaningful. And there we can already see we talked about jokes as constructions. We talked about argument structure constructions like the ditransitive as constructions. In the element, you can also see that even something like a morpheme, so unverb, that's a construction, a schema. And by the time you've got morphemes, you basically have everything. So from word formation, if you have compounds, things like armchair, steamboat, tabletop, where you have two nouns that you put together, that can be covered by a construction that's a schema that says put the two nouns together and then compute the meaning. So from word formation, that's the smallest meaningful elements that we have in language up until discourse elements, we can always look at the full meaning pairing. And so that's why it's constructions all the way up and all the way down.
Yes. Do you still have some time for several more questions? There's the one more coming from the comment section.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I've got something like 5 or 6 more minutes before I gotta move on.
Yes, that's wonderful. So Chocolate again, he asked, I don't know, it's a he or she. So could you please comment on the use of ChatGPT in multi-model discourse analysis? What could possibly be done with it?
Possibly a lot. The thing is, if you've got GPT-4, then you can upload already pictures, you know, and you could also specify for meaning pairings constructions you're interested in. My own work in multimodal construction grammar has focused on the fact that what is most interesting about this, I would argue, is not constructions, which is a strange thing to say for a construction grammarian. But constructions are always things that people have already stored. That's already part of the long-term memory. So that a transitive construction, that's a pattern that you have, that I have, it's already there, and we reuse it. Multimodal constructions would be pairings of verbal form and gestures, and they would have a meaning and they're stored. Now, people in construction grammar are still sort of arguing how many multimodal constructions exist. Do we have them at all? Because very often what seems to be the case is that you've got verbal constructions and you add gestures in a meaningful way, but it doesn't seem to be like a package, you know? So the gesture seems to be meaningful and the language seems to be meaningful, and you put these together compositionally. So Lego, I don't know whether you know Lego bricks, where you can stack things together. So in the same way. But in my own work, what I've pointed out is that it's not so important. Well, it is an interesting field of research, and people can do that to ask themselves, is there any verbal gesture combination that's stored and that's sort of fixed? But more interesting is even the fact that even if it's not fixed, you know, if it's just a construct, if it is something that's assembled in the mind, how do we do that? You know, how have we got the capacity to take something from one modality and make it meaningful and combine it with another one in a single situation and bring it together? And that's quite challenging. And I think there's more to be said about multimodal constructs and multimodal meaning making. I've suggested a couple of things with respect to conceptual blending. And if you want, I just gave a presentation about a very sort of superficial first presentation on artificial intelligence and multimodal construction grammar at Hunan Normal University. I've got the slides. I could also share these with your followers if you wanted to.
Thank you very much. Well, this question reminded me of maybe this the compilation of language and gestures probably vary between cultures. Some cultures, they use more gestures when talking. For example, Italians, they are known to always raise their hand when talking. Even babies do this. I watched some funny videos on YouTube. So,
and there's going to be inter-individual differences. That's also important. So maybe one speaker, you know, he or she might always do, when they say over and over again, they might always say over and over again, you know? And then if you look at tons of other speakers, they might not be doing it. So with respect to gestures and multimodal constructions, there is much more inter-individual variance. That's important to take into account. Yeah.
Thank you very much. let's say over there. It's one more question. It's a very general one.
Mhm.
So, what do you think might be the limit of ChatGPT? I think it's too general, this question.
What's the limit?
Yeah, the limit of ChatGPT, I think he wants to know the limit of ChatGPT in linguistic research,
Hmm.
maybe.
If you read the entire element, or if you
Mhm.
read about the risks, I mean, the limitations are also,
Yeah.
if you want to, you can have ChatGPT analyze a construction that's not English, because you could tell it the construction. I'm using one that was used in a different study, but noun, phrase, verb. The frog, the box moo pooed. You could tell it that's a construction of English. Give me 10 more examples, and it will give you 10 more examples. So you can sort
It
of,
always agree with you, never
yeah,
argue
you
with you.
can prompt it, you can direct it in ways where if you thought about it, it's not helpful. So there are limitations, quite clearly. And there are sort of also more technical problems right now, or at least, how shall I say, it's not a technical issue, but OpenAI obviously limits the number of texts you can upload. There are limitations as to what you can do. There's limitations as to knowing about the input, because for us as linguists, as cognitive linguists, it'd be really cool to know what was the input of all of this to get to this output. Because as I said, for language learning, it's not all like ChatGPT. There's other stuff. The human is different, but some parts are interesting, and we would learn much more if we knew all of the training data. So there's at least two limitations that I can think of off the top of my head, and there's probably more.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your time, Professor Hoffman. I know you have a very tight schedule, but and you still spend so much time with us. We're really, really grateful. And I hope we
It was
can
a
see
great
you in the live
pleasure.
stream again in the
And maybe,
future.
we get another chance to talk about something else
Yeah,
in the next couple of years. I wish you all the best.
thank
If
you very
anyone
much.
wants to know anything, they can contact you, and you can contact me, or they can send me an email.
Sure,
I look
sure.
forward to seeing you all.
And I'll continue to collect the question and feedbacks for the book. And once I got some result, I'll send it to you. And
Excellent.
so
Thank you very
thank you.
much.
Thank you, everyone. I wish you a nice weekend ahead, and Professor Hoffman, a nice weekend ahead. And see
Thank
you.
you. Have a great
Bye-bye.
weekend. Bye.